What's happening, guys? Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to a brand new episode on the VFR 750. So in the first episode we managed to get this thing running, which is fantastic. So what we're going to do is in this episode we're going to take a look at doing a bit of a service on it. We want to replace things like the spark plugs, air filter, oil and filter. We've also got a fuel filter, as I mentioned in the first episode, tucked down here. What I will do as well is I'll leave a link in the description. If you haven't seen the first episode, you can follow us along and see how we get on with this thing. So yeah, we're going to look at giving it a bit of a service. I'm also going to need to probably pop the rad out the way and change the coolant at the same time, because I need to gain access to the spark plugs, which are tucked just behind the radiator here. We also noticed in the first video that when we had the bike running, we had a few exhaust leaks. It looks as if there's sort of like a collector underneath the bottom here, and that's just rotted out over time, where you get all the road water and stuff like that splashing up on that. And the age of the bike, I think, is probably just worn out. So what I'm also going to look at doing is popping this lower fairing off, popping the heat shield off, and then taking that out the way and welding that up. I will look at probably getting a new exhaust in the future, but at the moment I'm just going to look at getting this one sorted, just so we can get the bike out on the road and enjoy it. So yeah, with that being said, what I'll do is I'll start by whipping these two covers off and we'll go from there. We've just drained the coolant out, and what I'm doing now is just undoing the 8mm securing bolts that hold the radiator in place. I believe you got two, one at the bottom here. It does pivot a little bit, but I'm just going to take it right out so I can gain the access I need. And then there's just some 8mm bolts tucked up behind this fairing here, which hold the top part. I'll disconnect the fan, and I've just disconnected the temperature switch as well. Or the fan switch. So then what I'll do is, as I say, pull the rad out of the way, and then we can get to those plugs at the front here. That's now given me fantastic access just to the two plugs here. So I'm just going to pop the leads out. The service bits have now turned up, which is great. So I can get on with just taking these plugs out, the same on the other side, and changing those over. Now the plugs are done, I'm just going to move on to the air filter. So I'm just going to whip the top cover off as you saw in the earlier video, swap that air filter out for a new one. So we've done all of the air box now, that's all sorted and the air filter's changed. Now going to move on because we've got a little fuel filter. So we're just going to look to replace this one. And as I mentioned before, that's just tucked behind this panel here. Just going to put the arrow where I can see it. So that's that all popped in place now. I've now popped all the radiator back in place and just popped all the hoses on and all the electrical connectors for that. I've had a bit of a look round the bike. Just giving it a general check and once over, looking for any leaks, any signs of wear or damage that I need to take care of. Also had a quick look at things like the suspension, making sure the wheel bearings are okay and all that sort of stuff. I do need to do simple little things like the tyre pressures and things like that. But what I think I'm going to do now is probably take the bike over to my friend's place so we can weld the exhaust up. Then I can run the bike up. We can look at doing the balancing of the carbs. And then once we've done that, the bike will be nice and warm and we can drain all of the oil out as well. What I will do is I'm going to top up the coolant before I do all of that stuff, so I can bleed all the cooling system and just sort of do it all in one go. So as you just saw, we managed to get the carbs dialed in. So we set all the vacuum gauges up on the bike. We then managed to warm the bike up, get the idle adjusted, and then we went ahead and balanced those carbs. So I didn't do much other filming over there because we were in the way a little bit, but I am just going to grab the camera in a second and I'll just show you that we managed to put a couple of patches on the exhaust system there. They're not pretty, but they'll do the job for now. And also we went ahead and changed a couple of the exhaust clamps because over time where the exhaust has corroded, it's sort of swelled at the links there and it's just broken the original clamps. So we've gone ahead and replaced those. When I was checking the bike over, I did happen to notice that the fork seal on this fork leg happens to be leaking. So I have gone ahead and ordered some fork seals and some oil and stuff like that. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to sort of show you briefly under the bike quickly. Then we're going to do the fork seals and we need to change the oil. We can put all of the trims and fairings back on and then hopefully we'll be in a position where we can present it for an MOT and basically just see what comes out of it. So yeah, with that being said, what I'll do is I'll show you around and then we'll get going. We've just welded a patch up under there and then another patch up under here and just painted those. As I say, they'll be covered by the fairing in it. At a later date I will look to replace the exhaust, but that will do for now. We've got the oil over there ready to go. Then if we come up here, it's just this fork leg here that's leaking. That one's nice and clean there. And if you can make it out, we just got a bit of oil misting on that one. So before I go ahead and start undoing the triple clamps and things like the bar ends, what I'm going to do first is I'm just going to undo these two here, because I think that'll be a lot easier. I'm only going to literally just break them free. I think that'll make it a lot easier when it comes to obviously them working on the forks when they're off the bike. We won't have to struggle too much. So yeah, we'll start with that. We've then got the 2 bolts, take that out the way. We can loosen off the triple clamps, get the front wheel out the way and the calipers, and then we can look at pulling those fork legs out. I'm not sure if you can just make out, but just up the back here, I've just put a couple of straps on the back of the bike so that hopefully it just distributes the weight a bit better when I take this wheel, when I take the wheel off. You've just got a little retaining clip here, so I'm just going to push that in and pull those off, and then I'll get something soft just to lay on here so I can, or down here, so that then I can just lay these on here and I'm not going to mark anything. So I didn't end up pushing these in. I actually ended up just using a pick here and then just popping those off. So now that I've got those clips out of the way, that's just allowed me to work these off the top of the bar there. And as I say, I've just rested these down on some material here so I don't scratch anything. And then what I'm going to do is look at undoing these parts of the top yoke. So I've got 2 bolts there, and then there's 2 bolts tucked down the bottom, and we should be able to look to pull the fork legs out of the bike. That's one. That's it. So first of all, what I'm going to do is just pop this bolt out here, and this is the little drain bolt for the oil, as far as I'm aware. Yeah, there we go. So it's just draining away. And then in the meantime, while we're waiting, we can just undo the top here. We've already broken that free. So there we go. And as I'm pushing this down, that's just expelling a load more of the oil in the bucket for me. Undo that nut out of the way. Pop those bits off. And the spring. I'll lay that spring down. So I'm just pumping this up and down just to get as much of the oil out the bottom as possible. And what we're going to do is just take this bolt out the bottom, and that'll give us access to the Allen key bolt, which is tucked in there. Then when we pop that out, we can pull the rod out the centre. I'm going to pop this bung back in for a second. I will look at changing the washer on that, little copper washer. Perfect, so that's now undone that. There we go. And we've got the rod, the dampening rod there. And plenty of oil coming out. Right, that's the outer seal out the way. And then tuck down in here, you've got a circlip that holds it all in. So just be nice and gentle. Hook that out. Like that. And then we should be able to separate the two. Just going to pop this down on the floor quickly. See if I can separate the two like that. There we go. So we've now got the two parts separated. So we've got the bushings at the bottom here, and then we've got the seal that's failed. So we're going to give all this a good clean. We'll check those bushings over quickly. Then we can look at replacing that seal, because we've got that one and some oil. So yeah, I'm going to give this all a quick clean. We'll just check to see. I think there is some minor pitting on this, just due to the age of it really. So we might just see if we can give that a clean, just make sure we've got no rough edges that are going to catch the seal. And then we can look at putting it all back together. So what I tend to try and do as I go is sort of lay this stuff out as well, so I can work my way back and hopefully get it all in the right order. So I've changed my gloves over, given those a swap out. I've given all of this stuff a good clean, and we've had a bit of a look at the fork stanchion here as well. So yeah, we've given all these components a clean as well. So it's just a case of fitting them back as we went. Or as we took them apart, should I say. So we just need to compare our seals just to make sure that they are the same as the ones we're taking off. So I'm just going to get myself a bit of the fresh oil. Bit of the fresh oil and just run that round the new seal that I'm fitting. And then just around the top here as well. Trying to be nice and gentle with that, just to make sure that we don't catch or damage it at all. That's it. So that's now all on and in place. Right, so we've now got that in place. We just need to put our clip back in. So I'm just working my way around, checking that that clip's in nicely, just pushing it against the sort of wall of the bottom part of the fork, so that all seems to be okay. So we can look at putting this seal on. And we can just push that one in by hand. Just check all the way around, and that's nice. So we have pumped as much of the fluid out of the dampener as we can. So we're now just going to look to install that back in there. And we've got a bolt with a new washer on there. So that bolt at the bottom there is all done up, so we can now look at popping the spring back in. Oh, what I might need to do actually first is try and hook the dampener rod out. So we just lean that over. So what I'm going to go ahead and do now is just fill the fork full of oil, and I've got this large fork syringe for that I use. So I'm just going to repeat all of that process and just fill that up with the correct amount of fluid that it needs. And then what I will do is I will just torque this top cap up onto here. So that's this one all now sorted. So what I'm going to do is just pop that to one side. I will give it a final clean at the end just to make sure that I haven't got any contaminants or anything like that left on it. So I'm just going to pop this to one side, and it's going to be a case of just repeating the process with the other one, and then we can look at popping them back in on the bike. So I've just nipped that bolt up by hand roughly so I can get this to the height that I want it to. So that's that side, and we just do the same with this side. So I've just nipped those up. What I'm going to do now is grab the torque wrench and torque all of this lot up to spec. So just nip that one up. Right, that's those done up. So I can move on to probably do the mud guard first, then the calipers. So just to finish up my work on the fork seal job, I'm just going to go ahead and torque up these handlebar bits, and then just check and torque up the very top of the fork bit there that I said I would do again. What I didn't realise is that actually these bar ends, or whatever we want to call them, the handlebars, have got little locators anyway, so they do just locate into one position. So I've now been able to wipe the marks off. I did also go ahead and just pop those little retaining sort of springs or C-clip, whatever you want to call them, we just pop those back in place as well, so they're all on. So what I'm going to do off camera now is I'm just going to go ahead, warm the bike up, change the oil, and then probably pop the fairings back on so that everything's ready to go. So we've been and picked the bike up from the MOT station, and we've got ourselves a pass. We have got one advisory, which is just for one of the bushings in the lower suspension, so I am going to look at addressing that in the future. But what I'm really eager to do now is give this thing a good clean and get out on it. So thank you so much for watching this episode. We'll get this thing all cleaned up and sorted, and we'll see you on the next one.